Did your doctor hand you a prescription for hormones for menopause with zero instructions on how to actually use it? And maybe you're standing in your bathroom right now wondering, like, where does this patch go, or how much gel is in a pump, or whether you're even doing any of this right. Then this episode is for you, because so many of you write to me and can connect with me asking exactly this. You finally get your hormones and then like crickets. There's no guidance on your cream, your patch, your gel, or whatever it is that you're taking. Or maybe you got some instructions and you're just kind of looking for a second opinion on how other people do this. I know this is so new. I remember I was so lost when I started learning about hormones and hormone therapy. I didn't realize there were so many choices. And I am doing this in Europe, and in the US, the information that I'm getting is different. And there's some things that are the same, but it can be different. So today I'm just going to go through the most commonly prescribed body identical pharmaceutical grade hormones. We're going to talk about estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and what they look like, where they go, how to use them, how often, and what I'm personally doing at 56. And I've been using hormones since I was 50 for the last 6 years. So I've gone through a lot of different things. Now, I want you to just remember that this is no one size fits all kind of a thing. There's so many brands. There's so many varieties. Europe is different from the US. There is some crossover, but just keep in mind, this is really general information as well. And just looking at the most common stuff. Okay. And the information that I'm sharing with you is coming from my own hormone and menopause journey, and is also what I'm seeing in my private community, what the girls are using. It also comes from my training at the Institute of Bioidentical Medicine with Dr. David Rosensweet. I did his program. I did other menopause programs as well. It also comes from years of picking the brains of doctors who prescribe hormones every day. I interview them on the podcast. I meet them at conferences, or I just find them through my network of people. Whatever I say here, regardless, always follow your doctor's instructions first. But I know this is why you're here, because sometimes you don't get enough. But make sure you clear any confusion with them, and not on Instagram, not on a podcast. Just gather this information and see where it fits for you or not. But one thing I really encourage women to do when they first find their doctor who's going to help them through this transition with hormones is please try to get their number, their email, or their assistant's number and email or WhatsApp. Many doctors don't want to see you for 3 months. They're like, okay, good luck. And now I'll see you in 12 weeks or something like that. So even if it's just 1 month, sometimes you need guidance on these things, especially in the beginning. You're not going to get that much instruction. You've been left guessing. Then consider this episode like a quick start guide. So keep in mind also that you probably heard a lot of words like MHT, HRT, bioidentical. Like, I'm going to try to clear up the confusion with some of these things, but MHT is menopause hormone therapy. HRT is hormone replacement therapy. There's some difference. Use them interchangeably very often, but menopause hormone therapy is what the menopause societies usually are referring to when they're using hormones for menopause symptoms. And HRT is like replacement, kind of almost like generic for everybody. But I always think this is such a targeted thing. I don't care if you say MHT or HRT. It's just, it should be really personalized. Now, you'll also heard the words bioidentical and bodyoidentical. What does that even mean? I use them interchangeably, but they're not really exactly interchangeable. But body identical is referring to compounds, and bioidentical as well, that are identical to the ones that your body makes. These are hormones that if you put them in a microscope, you see that there's no difference between yours and what these are created, bioidentical or body identical. It's just the body identical usually refers to something you pick up in a pharmacy as opposed to compounded. Bioidentical is very often referring to a compounded version. Not that one's better or worse. I mean, they have their advantages and disadvantages and needs for different people, but that's what it is. I kind of use them interchangeably. Then there's compounded, in case you didn't even know what that is, versus pharmaceutical. Compounded is when your doctor says, oh, okay, wait, my patient is allergic to peanut oil. Can you please make her a progesterone without peanut oil or something like that? Or she needs a specific dose or certain ingredients taken out. So that's why we have compounded, because we can kind of tailor make them to our needs. And the problem is they're often more expensive than what we can find in the pharmacy. So today I'm just focused on body identical pharmaceutical, just regular HRT. And in most Western countries, we need a prescription for this. But in places in Asia, you can just walk in and get whatever you need, which I don't recommend you do, but it is much easier to get them than, say, from somewhere else. But that's always not a good thing. Anyways, we're going to start with the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Some patients or some doctors like to start their patients with estrogen and progesterone. Some of them have testosterone added later. but some people just get started with testosterone only or progesterone only. That may come first as well. Some doctors get all three of them at once. It just depends on your symptoms and what you need and what your doctor's approach is. So there's just, again, no right or wrong with this. The way I learned it in general through Dr. David Rosen's suite is starting with the estrogen and progesterone at the same time. So if you were not to feel really great on one thing, or if you're taking two, actually, you're not really sure is the progesterone, is it the estrogen, right? But if you take estrogen, you very much, if you have a uterus, you have to take the progesterone, but I'll explain a little bit this later. But anyways, let's talk about the systemic estrogen. There are only 3 core evidence-based uses. It's for vasomotor symptoms, which is hot flashes and night sweats. GSM, the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. So these are things that are related to the pelvic area. So vaginal dryness, atrophy, frequent UTIs, things like that. And the prevention of bone loss and fracture or osteoporosis. It's the only 3 that is really evidence-based, that a doctor sometimes, if they're so strict and they don't want to go off-label and treat you for all the other 100 symptoms that you may be feeling, that's what it's actually, there's no doubt that you can use it for that. But off-label, let's say, doctors also like to share progesterone and estrogen and testosterone for your mood, for your brain fog, for energy, for joint pain, maybe you have some itchy skin, other classic symptoms is what estradiol can help with. And in the US, it's FDA approved for the prevention of osteoporosis, and other countries no. But again, it's just kind of a guideline. Doctors very much know that estrogen helps very much with bone, but again, it depends how they want to approach this. And the most common route is the transdermal stuff. That means gels, patches, and creams versus, there are plenty of people who are taking oral estrogen, but that's not the first place you want to go. And there's people doing pellets and injectables, but we're not going to cover that today. We're just going to do the transdermal, meaning on the skin. I'm going to start with the patch. The patch is so common. I know that in the US right now, there's a shortage of the patch, but the patch is really convenient. And you'll have a patch like this. This one is called the Estradot. This is what we'd get in Spain. There's something called Dermistril. And these two are actually the same thing. They're both patches. But what's interesting is the size. Look at this. This size, 50 micrograms patch. That's what that one is. And this one is also 50 micrograms. And look how big it is. And for me personally, I actually kind of need 100 microgram patch. And that's this big. And it covers my whole abdomen practically. It is so big. I love the idea of a patch, but honestly, this is 50 micrograms. This is 100 micrograms. Please go to YouTube if you want to see the sizes of these things instead of listening to it. But it is incredible. Honestly, it's crazy. But I'm going to show you generally how to use these in your skin. So actually, I'll add a little video on top of this. So you basically take this off. These are transparent. And so no matter what skin color you have, doesn't matter. This is also the 50 microgram patch. And when you replace it, you just take off the sticky stuff there. Try not to touch it. And then you just put it back on the opposite side of where the other one was. That's it. You can hold it for 10 seconds. Make sure it's really well put. And then there it is. Done. As long as you keep it below the waistline and try to avoid some creases or your folds in your clothes. And what we generally do with the patch is let's say if you're going to do it on your right side, whether it's your right upper buttock or your right upper groin, then after 2 or 3 days is when you change it and then you put it on the other side. So there's sort of a rotation that goes on here. And actually, I just showed you that this was the Estradot, and then we have the Demostril here. In the US, you would have things called the Vivel Dot or Climera, Vinivel, Allura. These are just brand names of the same thing. And they have different 25 micrograms, 50 micrograms. We have 100 micrograms. That's like the largest one, or the 0.01 patch. So you have in the US, again, you go by milligrams. In Europe, we go by micrograms. I know it can be very confusing, but whatever it is, these are very low dosages of hormones. When you put them on, you want your skin to be dry. You want it to be clean. It's better to do it after a shower. You take it off, you press and hold it for about 10 seconds to make sure it's really sticky there. So that's the patch. Then you have gels and creams and sprays. I'm going to just show you a gel, what a gel looks like. In Spain, we use the Clean. In Portugal, we have something called Estreva. So you can see this estrogel is in a tube and the Estreva is in a pump. this is the estrogel would generally, if you eyeball already like a pea size that okay, fine. But generally it comes with this tube. It's so annoying because this tube actually has air bubbles always in them and I always get it wrong. But then you'd want to suck it up, because you can see on the video, you suck it up and then you take it to about, in general, it's the 1.25, but you can see they have other marks here, the 2.5 as well, depending on how much you need. And then if you can see that it is about this much. To me, it's kind of a lot. Like that's a lot of gel and it takes forever to dry. That's why I'm not a huge fan of the Clean. And I remember I need higher dosages. So I'm sitting there waiting for it to dry. This one is the Estreva and this is a pump, although it's only, is it 50 micrograms coming out of here. Sorry, it's a 0.5 milligrams coming out of here. So it's a higher dosage than a patch, but you see it's a lot smaller, although you'd have to do 2 in order to get the same effect as this gel coming from a tube. So anyways, that's what an estrogen gel looks like. And the estrogel is like this one here, the one that's here, because you also have one, actually have the one from the UK and it comes in a pump estrogel and it's 0.06%. It's about 70.75 milligrams per pump. And you want to generally, let's see, I'm going to twist this on. Sorry about that. In the US, you have, as well as you have one called estrogel, but you also have Divigel, which I think is quite popular as well. But the Divigel comes in these little packets, similar to this testosterone packet if you're on the YouTube. But the Divigel is 0.1%, and you generally want to, the doctor will give you your prescription of how much you need. I don't know how much you need. They have starting dosages. Some people absorb them very quickly or they're very sensitive and they have to start very low and slow. And some people like me, it takes a lot more gel to actually get absorbed. So everyone's a little bit different, but you will be put on a starting dose and it's usually like 1 pump, maybe 2, I don't know. And then you take it every day and you want to put it on clean, dry skin after you shower. And if you're taking 2 dosages, oftentimes doctors may want you to do 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening. So again, there's so many ways to do this. A common spot that people put that on is on the inner arm. So if you just kind of put it on the inner arm and then you rub the 2 arms together, so you actually don't really need to touch it with your fingers. That's actually pretty convenient. But when I'm doing gels on my arms, I stick to one area. I always put it on my arms. Some people, you can also put it on your inner thigh, your outer arm, your shoulder. Just don't put it on the breasts. Okay. You don't want to put patches on the breasts. You don't want to put testosterone or estrogen on the breasts. You just don't need to put it there. And as well, be mindful of what you're putting near the vagina or in the vagina. Some ingredients are safe and totally great. It's a great place to absorb your hormones. And sometimes they have alcohols and other ingredients that you don't really want up there anyways. So talk to your doctor about that. But once you put it on your arms, you got to let it dry. This is why I love a spray. I just don't absorb the sprays very well, but a spray is like one little spitz on your arm and it just dries pretty quickly. And the sprays are also, again, the same thing, 1 spray, 2 spray, or 3 sprays. And when it comes to estradiol, generally, we take it on a constant dosage every single day, more or less. And I like even women who are in perimenopause to do it because I've noticed that there's a lot of girls in my community who have migraines. And sometimes when it's not static, it's not a constant dosage, and their hormones are going up and then down, they may trigger a migraine. So they think, oh, it's the estrogen that's causing the migraine, but it's actually the fluctuations that's causing the migraine. Now, when it comes to these kinds of estrogens, like the Divigel or the Estreva, this is systemic. That means it goes throughout your whole body. It goes to your brain, your heart, your bones, your muscles. It goes everywhere. So it's systemic and it would show up in your blood. Now, if you were doing something that is vaginal estrogen is a different story. It stays local. If you were to take a reading of your estradiol levels in your blood, it just wouldn't show very much. And vaginal estrogen is used for vaginal pain, dryness, atrophy, UTIs, like if you have frequent UTIs, overactive bladder, if you have that like really urgency to pee and suddenly out of nowhere you're like, oh my God, I have to pee, or you're waking up at night to pee, or you're just peeing a lot. All of this goes under the term GSM, the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. And this is where vaginal estrogen is super helpful and it's really safe. Almost anyone can take it. Now we have different versions. So estrogen is kind of an umbrella term. And when it comes to hormone therapy, we often refer to estradiol is the more powerful one, or estriol is a weaker type of estrogen. And when it comes to vaginal estrogens, I see doctors prescribing both depending on what they like or what you like as well. And there are different forms. Again, there's gels and creams, there are pessaries, and there's capsules. And on this one, actually, here's one I can show you. And this is a vaginal estrogen, and it's like a little pill. Like you can see, there's this thing that you insert, and then you just pop it out. There it goes. See? And it's this teeny tiny pill that goes up down in the vaginal wall. This tube that had the estradiol, this is 10 micrograms, called Vagifem. This has this little plastic thing. You insert it into the vagina, and then you just press that little thing and it just pops out like I just showed you. And it just stays in there. You do it at night before you go to bed. Make sure you don't, it doesn't fall out or anything like that, but it is so small. I think it dissolves quite easily. The only problem that I have with these plastic tubes is there's a lot of plastic waste. I don't know. This tube for the estradiol, you reuse it, right? You wash it, you reuse it, done. The other thing that I prefer actually myself, there's this pessary. It's an estriol pessary, and it's 0.5 milligrams. And they call them ovules or ovulos. And you can see here, if you're on YouTube, that it's this little wax bullet kind of a thing. This is how big it is. You can see. And you just stick your finger and you push it up into the vaginal wall and it melts. So you don't want to do this in the morning. You want to make sure you do it at night, and make sure if you're going to have any intimacy, you put it in after. Okay. So that's the vaginal estrogens. I think that's it is. There it is. The dosage, usually these kinds of things with the vaginal estrogen, it's about 2 to 3 times a week, and you adjust it to your needs. I had vaginal atrophy when I was something like around 51, right when I started exploring hormones. And interestingly enough, my OBGYN was like, oh, too bad. And I didn't even know what atrophy was. I didn't have dry vagina. I didn't have painful sex or anything like that. She just told me in an ultrasound. I started taking these 3 times a week. I took the estriol pessaries, and I went back to her 1 year later, and she did the ultrasound. She said, oh, you've reversed vaginal atrophy. So I knew, at least for me, it works. And that was just 3 times a week. Now, when you're using vaginal estradiol in a gel, let's say, you really got to get it in there. Okay. It's not just, oh, you put it on the labia minora or just the clitoris, or that's like the bonus. That's really cool. Even do it in your face. That's hydration for your vagina. But if you're trying to target vaginal atrophy, you really need to stick your finger up there and get into the walls. Also, some girls, and including me, actually, to be honest, although I do have a special product, I can use my estradiol gel a little bit on my face, okay? Because we do have receptors on our skin, and it is nice for the skin. But don't get estradiol just for that. That's not the purpose. It's a nice bonus. Now, when it comes to vaginal dryness and GSM, an alternative that doctors often prescribe is DHEA. And there's a prescription for Intrarosa. This is the brand name, but there's also non-prescription options that I use and I've been sharing for a long time. I'm happy to share. One is Karen Martell's Velvet V, or Velvety V, I'm not sure, Velvet V. And it's got estriol and DHEA in it. You can get it online. I've got a discount code. Go check out the show notes for that. And I get a lot of great feedback from her. And I also get a lot of feedback good from Dr. Anna Kabeka's Julva. And the only thing is, I think you can't get this in the UK. You can't buy it in Europe, but in the US, you have it. And it's just DHEA. And both of these products, I know the women who are making these, and they have integrity. And these are I hate the word clean because that just makes everything else sound dirty, but it has very good ingredients that are safe to put around there in that area. Okay. So that's DHEA. Now let's get on to progesterone. So the rule is that if you have a uterus, then you have to take progesterone. It's there to protect the uterine lining. But you can take progesterone without estrogen, even if you have a uterus. The estrogen is what grows the uterine lining, and we don't want it to overgrow and have a breeding ground for uterine cancer, right? So we need to have that lining at a nice thickness and thinness. And what progesterone does is it protects that lining from overgrowing. Plus you get benefits like sleep and mood and anxiety. This all helps a lot with those symptoms of menopause as well, but it can also backfire. There's progesterone intolerance. So just keep in mind that who knows where on that spectrum you're going to be. In general, with early perimenopause, I see that women in my community, at least, they're doing great with just the progesterone creams. But when I see them getting to later stages, they usually move on to an oral progesterone. And this is what it looks like if you're on YouTube, these little tiny white balls. And if you do have progesterone intolerance, if you're somebody who wakes up groggy, if you don't sleep, if your anxiety gets worse, if you're having the opposite effect of what everybody's talking about with progesterone, you can take one of these tablets that we normally take orally and you can use it vaginally. And then you bypass those side effects and you still get the protection of the lining of the uterine wall. But maybe you always have to go check. Okay. I actually do both. I take it orally, I put it vaginally, but I also want you to check the uterine lining with your doctor. And it's a very simple pelvic exam, and you can see if what you're doing is working or isn't working. The general starting dose is 100 milligrams. This is what this is. This one is called Sedigestan. There's Utrogestan, which I think was Sedigestan before in Europe. Many people start their patients with 100 milligrams, which is just one of these balls. Some people need 50 milligrams. It's a little harder to get, may need to get it compounded, and some need 200 or 300 milligrams. Like everybody is a little different. Just keep in mind, there's no one size that fits all, and your doctor's going to help you dial it in. Now, if you don't have a uterus, I get people asking me too, can I take it or should I take it? Well, yes, you can take progesterone. It does way more than just protect your uterine lining. So you can try it, see if it works for you. There are different ways to take progesterone. You can take it statically every single day, constantly. Some doctors like their patients to go off for a week and then get back on for the other 3 weeks. And some doctors will have you take it days 14 to 28 of the month or of your cycle. I am doing it days 14 to 28. I have a light 2-day bleed. It doesn't bother me, but I know some women who are absolutely against it. They don't like it, and that's perfectly fine. They don't want to see any blood. They don't want bleeding, and that's fine too. So then you just take it statically. But again, it's a non-negotiable if you are taking estrogen. Now we go on to testosterone. So testosterone is the forgotten hormone. It's prescribed generally just for low libido. And if you don't kick and scream and say that you have low libido, and even if you don't, you're not likely going to get it unless you got a really great menopause doctor who understands that it may help you with energy or your muscle or motivation, your mood, brain fog, bones, libido, of course. And sometimes it doesn't work for the libido. I don't know. And again, there are researchers who've shown that it's just for libido. It doesn't do anything for your muscle, doesn't do anything for your motivation. And they'll really stick hard with that because they do the research. I can't deny that I hear women in my community all the time saying they've got more motivation when they're on testosterone or their brain fog is alleviated. Or what can I say? You have to try it and see if it works for you or not. There are only 4 countries that have an approved female version, and that's Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and the UK now, which is quite amazing. Everyone else, you either have to get a compounded or a lab to make a female version, so it's much lower dosages for a woman, or you take the male version like this, Testagel, and you're supposed to take 1/10 of a man's dose. So you can see this looks like a little ketchup packet, and you just open it and you try to figure out, like the way I figured out in the beginning was like, oh, okay, let's see if I can make this last 10 days. And it's usually like a dollop like that, if you can see it on the video. So and what you do is you generally also want to put it on an area of skin that does not have a hair follicle because it'll make the hair grow. In the beginning, I was putting around the vaginal area and I was like, that's like this huge bush. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta like go and get my bikini waxed. And then I put it on the back of my knee. And because usually you don't have a hair follicle, I don't know why I should have taken a photo. I had a patch of hair on the back of my knee. So then I moved it over to my belly. So now I don't seem to have a hairy belly, but I guess it could happen. But it seems to work for me well there because I'm already using estradiol on my inner arms. So I figured, let's put the testosterone somewhere else. Keep in mind that this is really annoying to have the male version because when you have air touching anything, right, it decomposes it slightly. I don't know how much, to be honest, when it comes to testosterone. It'd be interesting to find out, but I just could close it like this and I just keep it. I try not to get air in it anymore and then just use it for 10 days. And actually, I've been using a little bit more because I felt that it wasn't really doing anything. So I increased my dosages a little bit. But again, talk to your doctor about that because if you have any side effects, you may know that you're overdosing. That's you may getting some acne, maybe getting some chin hairs or more chin hairs than usual. Maybe you're starting to have male pattern baldness where that you're having a receding line. Like this is a sign you've gone way too far. And then if you've really gone excessively with the testosterone, you may have a change in your voice. You may have clitoral engorgement. Every doctor I've interviewed who prescribes testosterone says they've never seen that. And it just doesn't happen. Well, I guess because they don't prescribe those kind of dosages. But again, it doesn't mean you should be experimenting on yourself. Always talk to your doctor. But there are other forms of with testosterone. There's troches and injections, pellets. All these things are less common. Pellets are usually a quite high dosage. It's definitely not something I would start with. It's so much easier just to go with a gel, as annoying as it is. And the thing is, the compounded testosterone is so much easier because usually it's like a click system or a pump, and you know exactly how much you're getting and all that, much easier than just this little testo gels, but it's more expensive, right? Male testosterone is really cheap. Anyways, with all your hormones, make sure you wash your hands and try to keep away from kids and pets for about 30 minutes, and you should be fine. Or you just cover the parts. Like if you put it on your arm or your leg, you put on your shirt, you put on your trousers, and you get going. But anyways, also another place actually you could put the testosterone, and not necessarily the male, because I think there's some alcohol in here, but if you have a compounded one, some doctors tell their patients to put it on vaginally, and they feel a tingling sensation. It helps with the libido and all that. But again, everyone's a little bit different, and make sure the chemicals are not interfering with your needs. So I'm not going to talk too much about cost because everywhere in the world is different. Compounded generally is more expensive than pharmaceutical. If it's FDA approved, it's generally insurance may cover it. You have a better shot. But I've spoken to women in my community who spend $500 a month for their hormones. Personally, I don't think this is sustainable. I don't know how you do it. In Europe, it's very often subsidized. So my progesterone here, I get a month's supply for €5. It's what, like $6, $7 a month, right? And if I'm taking it half the month, well, then this lasts 2 months. The Estraclean, the patches are also about $30, let's say, more or less, a month. And the gel is maybe 15. Some patches are 20, 30. I'm not spending more than 35 euros a month, 40 euros a month, let's say, for hormones. It is that sustainable. But I know in the US it can be, there are ways around it though. Okay. So the next thing we need to know is the labs. When you start taking your hormones and you find your dosage, and only 25% get it at the first shot. So the other 75 is either overdosed and overshot, and the rest are somewhere in between. And so you need several times to talk to your doctor, or at least to talk to your doctor and self-titrate to find your dosage. And then doctors would generally, like, once you find your optimal dose, they'd say between 6 to 8 weeks to test. Yes, I think you should be testing. You want to make sure, especially if you're taking testosterone, you're not overshooting. And you want to know that you're within the goalposts of not too little and not too much estrogen and progesterone as well. You also need to test your uterine lining. You need to, but that's usually a much longer process. You don't test in 6 to 8 weeks and you see it, but it is usually about 6 to 12 months after is when you do check your uterine lining to see how you're doing. Things you can get signs of overdose. I told you about the testosterone stuff, the acne, the facial hair, sometimes irritability or aggression. And then with the estrogen, if you've overdosed, you know, you've gone a little bit too far. If your breasts start to get tender or they're feeling full or your nipples are tender and sensitive, water retention, maybe you have some cramps. And if you've gone too far with the progesterone, maybe you feel a little weepy, a little lethargic, drowsy, groggy when you wake up in the morning if you're taking an A, and also water retention as well. There's so many symptoms, and there's some that cross over. So it's like the water retention could be too much estrogen, could be too much progesterone. This is where you got to talk to your doctor, try to figure it out. But I do have a really cool chart to show you what's underdose and what's overdose to see where you might be. So you can figure that out on your own. And I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And that's it. So get that chart. I also have in the show notes a tracker, a symptom tracker that you can just see how you're doing and track it and take it to your doctor and show them what symptoms you're actually having or still having or actually have gotten rid of. So track it. If you can't track, it's really hard. It's hard to go talk to your doctor, but keep me posted how you're doing. Ask me any questions at any time. And if you need help, please join us in the Biohacking Menopause membership group. We'd love to have you there. This is where I can help you personally get your stuff together and understand how this works and how it doesn't work. We have doctors and menopause experts coming into the community week after week. So you have plenty of opportunities to get a second opinion, to hear another doctor's take on how they're doing hormones, and it's there for you. So I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well to join us. And we're having a very special offer that's limited, free to join in for 7 days. Please jump in 7 days. You get a feel for what it's like, dip your toes in, see if it's for you or not. If not, you just leave. Nothing's lost. So I have a link to that in the show notes. I hope to see you there. Have a good day, good night, good morning, wherever you're at, and I'll see you next time.